Hi, I'm Adam Lawrence, founder of project delivery consultancy Create Cadence. And in this webinar, we're diving headfirst into one of the hottest topics of last year, AI and how businesses can unlock its true potential. Now, let's be honest, everyone's talking about AI, but there's still so much confusion. Where do you start? How do you move from playing around with ChatGPT to actually integrating AI into your business in a way that drives real value? These are the questions and more that I put to Verena Weber, a leading AI consultant with experience at companies such as Amazon and Deloitte, to break it all down for us. From strategy to practical implementation, Verena takes us through the real steps businesses can take to turn AI into a game changer. If you're wondering how to leverage AI beyond the hype and want to hear real-world examples, insights, and some surprising truths, this is the session for you. So stick around. This is one webinar you definitely won't want to miss.
Well, hi, Verena. Thanks for joining me today to have a discussion about AI and how businesses can make the most out of the AI tools that are available. I've throughout 2024, I've shied away from talking about AI for a number of reasons. One of which everyone else is talking about it. And I wasn't sure what else I had to add on the topic. But one of the things I've really observed as I've been talking, as I do most days, to the clients and the businesses that I work with, is there's still a lot of confusion out there amongst those businesses around the tools that are available, around the process that those businesses can really take to try and understand how they can best utilize AI in their businesses, how they can really get the benefits. And what I really wanted to do to get you on the talk today, Verena, is to go through those steps, because I know you're an AI consultant, you work with businesses to actually help them to understand how best to utilize AI. But before we dive into all of that, do you want to just do an introduction? Just tell us a bit about your background.
Yes, sure. Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Happy we're having this chat today, Adam. So yeah, my name is Verena, and I've been working in the field of AI for over 8 years, so long before the hype actually started. And originally, my background is in statistics, so I studied statistics, but then started my career in data science and machine learning. So basically, already decided that I wanted to go into that direction professionally. And yeah, I started my career working as a consultant at Deloitte, really helping companies work with data science, machine learning in 2017. So that was long before the hype, and was still a little bit of a different thing. You know, not everyone was aware of AI or machine learning and data science. It was more about, showing people what you can do with it. And yeah, then I decided I really want to learn more technically, and so that's why I decided to leave consulting. And well, I had several roles as data scientist, machine learning scientist, research scientist in different industries. So I worked for eBay, I worked for Dr. Oetker, and also worked for Amazon as a research scientist on the Amazon Alexa team. So I really specialized in natural language processing, deep learning, and generative AI. And yeah, beginning of this year, I decided, it's time to go back to my roots, so to say. So I switched back to consulting. So now I'm working as an independent AI consultant, and I help companies navigate their AI journey from the very beginning. So that means use case discovery, AI strategy, all the way through to implementation.
Great. I imagine you're one of the few people with that kind of real background and experience that dates back through the period that you've said. So yeah, as I said in my opening there, what I'm really interested in, I think what's really interesting for our clients is to know where to start. Is to know. You hear about, we're all messing around with ChatGPT these days for various different things, but how to really understand from a business point of view how you can really start to utilize AI and to really get the benefits from it. So I just wondered, we'll step through your process, or the process that you take with the clients that you work with in your consulting role. But if we start at that beginning point, where do you start when you go into a business, or a business engages with you to try and understand how they can benefit from AI tools?
Yeah, so I mean, the starting point always is looking at the company's or the business overall objectives, right? Because in the end, AI is a tool. It's a technology we can leverage to reach certain goals, and those goals obviously need to be aligned with what the business wants to achieve, right? We don't want to implement AI for the sake of implementing AI. So it all comes down to understanding the business objectives really well, and then help them craft this, what I call AI vision. So that is basically understanding how AI can support them reaching the goals they want to reach. And in general, there's two roads that you can go down. So you can go down this internal process optimization road where you understand, okay, how can I use AI to make my maybe manual, inefficient processes more efficient or even automated? And then there is the other side that you can look at, like, how can I use AI to enhance my product or services? And then once you've decided what you want to tackle first, so I usually recommend to go with one before the other. And you then can start looking at use cases. And also what I find important is that I think there's always two streams that should kind of happen in parallel. So there is what I just talked about. So how can we leverage AI on an organization level? But then there's also the other side, like how do we integrate it into our daily business? How do we enable our employees to use this technology and in that way also build trust into it, right? And facilitate the adoption, because in the end, it's not just about coming up with great idea and developing great solutions. Actually, I mean, often the trickier part is everything that comes with it. So transforming the organization and facilitating adoption of this new technology.
Yeah, yeah. You sounds like you've hit the start there on a common problem that we see in organizations of buying a solution and then trying to work out how to make it work. And then that's something we often talk to our clients about is you've got to understand your business first of all. You've got to understand what your objective is or what you're trying to achieve, and then start looking at the tools or the solutions which might be able to deliver that for you. Because that's the way you're going to get the most value out of it. I think that was essentially the approach
Yes,
you were saying with AI. Yeah.
exactly. And especially with AI, it's like a common old problem that people, get carried away by some kind of cool technology or hype thing, and they start the other way around. So they start with the solution and then they try to find a problem
Yes.
instead of defining the problem and then finding a solution for it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm almost comforted to see that even though we're talking about new technology, it's the same. It's the same problems that we see with all of that. Okay, so just talk me through the steps in a little bit more detail. So you go into an organization, you sit down with the leaders within that organization, you really start to think about that strategy and approach. What do you produce as part of that? If we think about this step of the process, what's the output look like from this stage?
So basically, it's more like a commitment to what is AI here to support us with, right? So like I said before, it's either a commitment on focusing internal processes or commitment on product service centric AI. And then basically from there, we start digging deeper. Like if you decide to go with a process centric AI, it then really comes down to documenting processes well and really diving deep into these processes before you then move on to identify potential uses of AI.
Okay, so you'd identify an area within a business perhaps where you think, I mean, the typical ones that I see in the organizations that we work with are customer service type queries, or with insurance businesses, it's quite often claims handling. So with the business, you identify an area within the business where, from a strategic point of view, they're looking to optimize or make more efficient. And then you would start looking at the processes in that area of the business and really starting to document those and looking at those in more detail. Are those the...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly. If you work with like really top leadership, yes, but sometimes, already a certain area of the business comes to you, and then, yeah, it's also kind of clear which area you're looking into. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we get then? Because I know the next stage in your process is about starting to identify use cases. for AI. So how do you get from that stage of documenting the processes to starting to identify the use cases, for instance?
Basically, you have a good understanding of the processes that you want to automate or make more efficient. And then from there, I mean, it's also always important to bring different people to the table because everyone brings different perspectives. So, and then you basically just start brainstorming. You look at what you've documented, you look at potentials there, you start brainstorming where you could start, and then just basically try to take a user-centric point of view to then design the potential solutions, right? So I often work with design thinking here, where you first open up, you create a lot of potential solutions, and then you narrow them down again. And basically so once you have a lot of different potential use cases, you try to prioritize through potential impact versus feasibility. And ideally, you want high impact, good feasibility, and those are the ones you start with.
So bringing this group together, is that really about getting these people to bring these processes alive? Is it about where the pain points are, or where the inefficiencies are within the process that allows you to then get your list of, and start to evaluate?
It's about evaluation and also in the end adoption, right? So you definitely want to have those people there that in the end would work with the solution, who would be the end users. But then you also want other people that maybe understand, of course, the IT or data side very well, or so in the end, making AI solutions successful is really about bringing together a lot of different perspectives, because there's so many components that basically go into it. And I mean, I only can come in with the kind of technical expertise, but then the business expertise always is within the business. So we need to make sure that we're really involving people from the client side into the design of the solution and the prioritization of the use cases.
Yeah. Again, it feels like quite a parallel in the work that we do, because we're always strong advocates for getting, it's generally the people on the front line who actually know what the problems are. Well, they speak to the customers, they're the ones who will really tell you the honest truth about how the business is operating. So I think it's, I think you're saying the same thing there, that actually getting those people involved in this process. Well, what I'm hearing is
it also creates trust, right? I mean, also when we talk about adoption later on. So it's important to really identify the problem and solve the right problem, but then it's also great because you have their trust. They feel like they're involved in this whole process, and then they're more willing to adopt it.
Yes, so you're not just shoving a process on someone and saying, there you go, there's your new process. Yeah, they've been part of the journey to get there. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if we flip it around a little bit with use cases, then what are the challenges when in this stage of the process? What are the if you think about businesses that have done this well or not so well, what are the differences? What really makes this work?
Yeah, I think there are many answers to this question, right? So definitely one thing is senior leadership commitment, because that is really what gets things moving, what gets things going forward. So what I often see is that if there's not enough leadership support behind it, then people don't show up to the meetings. You maybe don't get the resources to drive the process or the progress as much as you like. That's definitely a problem. And then, of course, understanding the business, right? So coming back to this good problem understanding is something that can be tricky. And especially if you have a lot of stakeholders involved, that, of course, makes it sometimes complex to then, in the end, really come up with a clear list of prioritized use cases.
Yeah. And in this, because I know we talked at the start about this, people come, buying into a solution without really understanding the problem. I guess part of that commitment from leadership is having a real commitment to being really open about the challenges within their business, to not just buying the latest shiny tech. I suppose it's about really getting into the nuts and bolts of the business and having a commitment to making improvements.
Yes, and also, I mean, sometimes everyone wants AI now, but not but AI isn't always the best solution for the things they want to do, right? So also they're kind of being open in terms of what kind of solution you in the end adopt to fix the problem. Because not AI is great and AI has a lot of potential, but it also comes with complexity and certain risks. And if you don't need to use it, and if you maybe just can use a certain automated Python script, right? That's not AI, it's just automation, but it still solves the problem, then yeah, it's good to pick that and not necessarily just go for AI, because now everyone wants AI.
So that's a key part of your job as well when you work with clients? Is it to
Educate.
yeah, exactly, to educate and make sure they're taking on a solution that fits
Yeah.
the problem that they're bringing to you, even though
Yes.
that might not be, coming in as an AI consultant, they probably expect AI, but I guess a good consultant will always be telling them what they actually need rather than selling them something they don't.
And yeah, definitely. And the other thing also is really educating them on what AI can do and what it can't do. Because in my experience, I've seen that clients have this kind of magic idea of what AI can do. And, everything, you basically press a button and everything works automatically, and everything, the AI can learn and do anything without you doing much work. That's not necessarily how it works. So basically also, yeah, educating them on what are the foundations that you need, what are the prerequisites, and yeah, even like certain challenges or yeah, problems that maybe AI can't handle yet, or at least not in a such reliable way that they would need it. Yeah, so sometimes it's also a good solution to have maybe a rule-based approach or something that is rule-based combined with AI at certain parts, but not, making everything AI.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like, again, this is probably a really obvious statement to make, but it's like AI isn't going to come in with a click of a fingers and sort your business out. There's work to do. If you want to get the results out the other end, you've got to put the work in first to really understand your business, your pain points, and then to work through the solutions. But if
Yeah.
you do that, you should get the results out the other end. So,
Yes. And potentially also your data, right?
yes.
That is an important part. And I mean, even if you're not training models yourself or anything, adding your data or making your data available to these solutions, yeah, it's also a critical part.
Yeah, yeah. And let's touch on that for a moment, seeing as you've mentioned it, because a lot of what we do as a consultancy is work with clients to get their data into. I guess it wasn't this originally, but I guess what we're actually doing is getting their data AI ready. And is that a key challenge you see for clients, that their data often isn't in the right format, shapes, availability to support their AI aspirations?
Yes, and to comfort everyone here, data quality is an issue that every company is dealing with, right? That's not only the clients you're working with, but yeah, I mean, even at Amazon and Microsoft, I know data quality is still an issue, and it's a hard thing to tackle. But yes, for sure. I mean, it's about format, it's about availability. Some clients that I work with, for example, yeah, the data just wasn't there yet. So they started or had to start to collect it or prepare it. And then, of course, yeah, putting it in the right format, making sure the quality is right, making sure it's easily accessible with the kind of platforms you're trying to build models on. And this can involve a lot of complexity, especially if you're working with bigger companies.
Yeah, and is that part of your role in this process? Is it to understand the shape and the availability of the data? I guess you're trying to match that to the solution the client wants.
I'm usually, yeah, trying to understand what do they want, and then I assess whether the data and the infrastructure is ready for that.
It's okay. So we've got to that stage where we know the way we want to go. We've established some use cases. We've worked with those groups of people from the front line to understand where the pain points are. We've identified something that looks viable in terms of an AI use case. What's the next stage of the process? How do you go from that to actually getting to a place where you've got something working in production within a business?
Yeah. So the way I do it is usually with 4 phases or 4 steps. Yeah. And The first one is what I call a proof of concept or a prototype. So this is a very easy, proof of concept where you simply do a couple of first experiments to get a better feeling, how well this use case work with out-of-the-box models, how well is the data already, right? Because then when you start training a first model or working with a first model, you get a better feeling for that. And this these days it's super easy because you can leverage all the pre-trained models. You don't have to train anything yourself. And you can also just leverage API calls. It can be something that runs on a developer's laptop where you just build like a, small test set and you run a test based on this test data set. Yeah, just to give you a sense. And
these prototypes, what you're saying is these prototypes you can fail fast if you like, or prove out the case quite quickly with the technology that's available today. I know it's probably hard to say because it depends on what sort of prototype. Are we generally sort of talking about days, weeks, months to work through these sort of proof of concept?
Proof of concept can be, if the data is in place, I guess the most amount of work again goes into data preparation. So preparing, the test set and preparing the data you want to test with. But it can be done within a week, maybe less. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, and that's going to give you a good idea then about your next steps, whether you can take this forward or whether it's something that either isn't going to work or the business aren't quite ready for.
And it gives you a good understanding in terms of performance, right? So the key here really is building a good test set that is representative of the kind of live traffic you would have on that model. So basically giving it very realistic examples so that you can understand how good the performance is out of the box.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that it sounds like that there's probably more work involved in that as in the prep for prototype rather than actually the build of a prototype.
Yeah. But that is always the case. Like data science, machine learning, most of the time really goes into data preparation, data cleaning, augmentation, whatever, and training the model is usually a much smaller part.
Okay, so we've got to that stage. We've done our proof of concept. We think that we've got something that we could take forward. Where'd you go from there?
So then basically the next step is really building a minimal viable product or MVP. And the purpose of this stage is actually building something with a kind of small scope, but something you can already have users test. And this might be a selected group of beta customers, or you just test it internally. But definitely something that is, published somewhere and people have some kind of interface and can use it.
I think it's probably worth just dwelling on this because I think people do get confused between prototype and MVP. I think you've defined some of the difference there, but maybe just expand on that a bit more. What's the real difference between those two things in the way that you work?
Yeah, maybe we can also use like a chatbot as an example. So, for example, the proof of concept would be like maybe 10 customer questions that it can answer, and it would really just be implemented. You have like a script maybe on a developer's laptop that does a few API calls, use a little bit of prompt engineering, and runs then this model on a test set. And you just get an idea of how well the chatbot answers the questions in the test set. Now, for the MVP, we don't want to restrict our test to a test set. So that is why we open it up to users. And this can be a group of selected beta customers or internal users. And here you also increase the scope a little bit. So maybe it would be 20 plus questions that the chatbot can handle. And yeah, it's already integrated in a test website. So it's not something that you execute through running a script on a laptop, but it's something that has a user interface and people can access through this interface.
Yeah. So to summarize that, it's real usage, but in a boundaried scope, in a limited scope, is the difference. Whereas the prototype is just about proof in a non sort of production or non-user type environment that actually it's worth moving forward to the MVP.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, and getting real customer feedback, right, in the MVP, whereas in the first one we don't. Yeah.
If you think about the MVP, if we stay with that for the moment, yeah, I mean that feedback, I guess, is the bit maybe that I wanted to focus in on. So you then really start to use that to shape the build, to understand what's working, what isn't working, and to move forward from there. Is that the next step?
Exactly. So you already, I mean, so you use that feedback also to understand, am I solving the correct problem, and am I solving it in a way that my customer want? Yeah. So again, narrowing in on this problem, understanding what customers want, and then using that to iterate. But also because you are already having some sort of production environment, and you're also generating learnings in terms of, how do I track my data? How do I track my improvements, identify weaknesses of the bot? So you basically already have you have like a dry run of having a production system, which is of course valuable in terms of learnings when it comes to implementation.
Okay, so we've done that. What's the next stage in your process? Is that then implementation, is it, or is there another step?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, implementation, you can call the whole thing implementation, but what you then really do is you implement the go live version. So basically the full version of the product, the full first version of the product. Yeah, so coming back to the chatbot example, you would then, the chatbot would be able to handle, let's say, minimum 95% of your requests. It would be available 24/7 to all your customers. It would be available on your website, and everyone can access it. And so basically you're scaling this MVP into a full version of the product. And I mean, also what's interesting to mention is that basically for the prototype and the MVP, most though for the prototype, it's more a data science task, right? So you need to understand, what are the models that we're using, or the algorithm, what is the data that we need, where does this model still has problems, how do I implement guardrails in case of LLMs, right? But then MVP, or especially go live, is much more an engineering task. So you're much more focusing on building the infrastructure such that you can handle all this traffic, and you can have like automated monitoring and automated deployment. So all these things that when it comes to maintainability, how do you scale it?
And if we think about this process again, I'd ask a similar question to what I asked with the use cases. The companies that do this really well, what do they do? The ones, and what are the pitfalls in this process of taking your use case from the prototyping through into production?
Yeah, good point. And I mean, ideally, you already start asking the right questions in the prototype phase, right? So, I mean, I've heard people build a classification model with ChatGPT, right? So basically just classifying text into certain categories. And I mean, it's something you can do, but when to want to build this into production, you have high traffic, it's probably too expensive, right? So you need to think about, what are solutions that we can scale in a way that are cost efficient. And these are important things to keep in mind already when you're building the prototype. How can we scale it? How much money will it cost us? And how can we maintain the solution and make it sustainable?
I mean, I always think that's one of the key words in minimal viable product is viable, isn't it? Because it sounds like that solution you've just talked about there it's a minimum product, but it's not actually viable in terms of something that would be a solution particularly for a larger organization. So it's thinking about that scaling from the start. It's not just thinking about a small solution at the start. It's thinking about where can this solution actually take us? Is it going to fix the problem that we've talked about earlier on in the process?
I mean, okay. I mean, maybe it's also okay if for the POC you don't use the most cost-efficient way, right? For the POC, it's more about experimenting fast, maybe even for the MVP. But then you still need to ask a question early on, because only if you find a way that's cost-efficient and scalable, you can actually bring it to production.
So if I were to sort of summarize then your process, these three steps are all about, first off, getting the business clear about what the strategy is around AI, you know, where they want to focus their attention within their business around AI solutions. The second stage is then coming down a step in terms of detail to actually start looking at actual processes, actual pain points within the business, bringing frontline teams into this process so that you can really identify the use cases that are going to make a difference within that organization. And then the final step is then about taking those use cases through an iterative process of proof of concept, minimum viable product, and then through into production. So those are the three stages that you take your clients through as part of your consulting work.
And yes, and then it's not, I mean, many people think that's it, right? But you're not done then.
Yeah.
The important part is actually really then maintaining the solution, right? Because you need to keep optimizing and you need to keep improving the solution. You need to be aware, you know, there happen shifts in the data or some kind of external factors that change the behavior of your users, and then your solution is not working as it used to. So you also need to make sure that you're properly monitoring it and you're taking action to improve it. But that's the fourth stage. That's why I was talking.
Okay.
That often, you know, people forget about it. They think, oh, they maybe, you know, it's put in the production and then we're done.
Our work here is done. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So where does your involvement come in that fourth stage then? Do you help equip businesses to have the monitoring, to have the understanding, or do you tend to stay involved throughout that, you know, once the solution's live?
So my goal always is to enable businesses to then maintain the solution themselves. And what I do is, I mean, it really depends like how much knowledge is in the company. Do they already have maybe a data science team or not? But I definitely educate them on machine learning operations. So that is what we call this field that is all about, you know, proper reproducible ML systems and proper monitoring. And I definitely educate them. And the goal is always that, you know, at some point they don't need me. And I don't stay involved forever.
The thing I'm really taking away from this, which is going to sound very obvious, but that and this is the same with all tech really, is that AI it's not a magic solution here. There's work involved. You've got to have a real good understanding of your business and the problems within your business. And it's not a right, we've done AI, we can just walk off and leave things. It's something that needs that ongoing attention. But I guess, you know, if you were to summarize, you know, despite that, as I say, there's work to do. But I suppose what are the real benefits if you think of some of the use cases that you've implemented within organizations? Yeah. What changes have you seen within those companies?
I mean, yeah, also there, right? There's also different levels of AI adoption and leveraging AI, right? So there is this thing of basically you just use tools, yeah, then you can build your own systems and you build your customized solution. So there's again different levels of how much you customize AI to you, and yeah, and then that comes also with different kind of complexity. So if I build my customized solution like a RAG system, so retrieval augmented generation, which is very popular at the moment, I mean, that has more complexity than, you know, if I build a lot of custom GPTs for my company and that supports my employees in their daily work. But yeah, in general, I do think there's a lot of potential. Like you said, there's some pre-work involved, but once you get that going and once you get people on board, and I always find it fascinating and great to see how people then, you know, maybe, I mean, also in Germany, people tend to be a little bit skeptical towards change and new things, but then I always love seeing...
Not only in Germany, Verena, don't worry.
I just love seeing when you then, you know, you let them play a little bit with it, you show them what's possible, they start doing things, and then all this fear is gone, and then there's the excitement. And I think this is where then there's a lot of potential, because then they get creative and they come up with more ideas, and it can be already simple things. Like I have helped a company, like their daily business was really writing a lot of summaries, and we just built a custom GPT, which is not rocket science, but it really helped them a lot, and they're doing their summaries much faster now. Yeah. Or yeah, things like building customized chatbots to support customer service, I think is a pretty classical use case.
I was going to say, would you, you know, if you've got a business, as I say, we work with financial services companies of all sizes, but businesses at the smaller end of it that might be nervous about getting started with looking at AI tools and systems. Would your advice be to start small,
Yeah.
to start with something? And actually, because what I felt like you were describing when you were talking about people getting creative is that it almost creates a snowball type effect. You start, people see how it's working, and then they're able to start thinking about new ideas, and it gradually builds and builds and builds.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, always. I think starting small is always a good idea. And I think every company, no matter if you want to build customized solution or, not really interact with, or not really build your own AI assistants even, I think it is crucial that you give people the chance to play around with it and do it in, just, give them some kind of license to a large language model. Let them build their own GPT or small assistant. And I think it's also always worth an investing training, because I feel that is taking the hurdle down. People sometimes want to be taken by the hand, and this just builds trust and then from there, because they know the business so much better than I can ever. So then they come up with the use cases. Yeah. And that's where you want to go, right? You want the ideas to come from the business.
Yes, I mean, the word that came to my mind when you were talking there was play. You're almost kind of saying, let your people play with AI within the confines of your organization,
Yeah.
and they'll start to come up with the ideas for how they can start to use it and start to make the work that they do more efficient.
Exactly.
And I guess the flip side of that is that the mindset that might cause challenges is one where you're trying to, I don't want to use the word control, but where it's that opposing mindset to that, isn't it? Of not being open to new ideas, not being open to letting your people get involved and start to think about where there's inefficiencies within the business.
Yeah, I mean, you can make your life harder, right? But isn't it nicer if, other people come up with the ideas and you don't have to do all the work yourself? I mean,
That's a great way of putting it. I really like that, actually. Really like that. Yeah, you can make your life harder. But
you can just give the load to others, right? Share the burden of how to make sure you're staying competitive with AI. Just share the burden with everyone instead of taking on yourself.
I think that's great. That really resonates with me. And I think there's multiple benefits there, aren't they? Like you say, you're much more likely to get some better ideas, more creativity, and it's that trust and adoption, which I think you've mentioned a few times now, around people actually engaging and starting to use these tools more.
And employee satisfaction, right? I mean, when people can get creative and feel like they can contribute, that's always a way to make them happy, because you don't just, I mean, not each and everyone is the same, but there's also people out there who don't just want to execute, that are happy to be part of a creative process.
Okay, that feels like a lovely place to finish. But before we do, is there anything we've missed? Any other, if you think about organizations that might be thinking about taking this step, is there anything that you would say to them that we haven't covered so far?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing we haven't talked about is, talking about guidelines. Develop some kind of basic standard guidelines that you give people that they should follow when they use your organizationally approved tools, right? So I think organizations should give people at least one tool that they can use, that is safe for them to use, along with some guidelines on how to use it and when. And I think that is a great starting point. Again, if you have the budget, I think it's also always great to give people some training, because that makes it more likely for them to get going, get some inspiration, build some trust. I'm doing a lot of these kind of trainings, and it's always, amazing how people walk out there inspired.
Sounds great. And like you say, I think that really brings this alive, doesn't it? It takes it from being something to be slightly afraid of, or something that is as we've said, change is a frightening thing, to actually something to enjoy and embrace, and actually then really become part of your everyday work, which I think is beneficial, as you've said, to any business. But also great, that great first starting point, I think, to get moving with things. Thank you, Verena. I found that really interesting discussion. I know we've only covered these topics at a very high level and the steps that you go through, and I know you've got a huge amount of technical knowledge and around some of these tools that sit behind it. If anyone is listening that wants to reach out to you and find out more, about your approach and how you work with businesses, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can visit me on my website, verenaweber.de. Otherwise, LinkedIn is also always a good way to reach out to me. Yeah, on my website, you'll also find a Calendly link in case you want to book a quick intro call. And yeah, you'll also find my email there.
Yeah, brilliant. And I would encourage anyone listening to do that. See, Verena's got a huge amount to share and a huge amount of knowledge in this area. So thank you very much again, Verena. It's been a fascinating discussion. Yeah, as I say, I've taken lots away. I'm sure anyone watching will do the same. So very much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.